It's been a busy week as the inquest into the deaths of two First Nations men who died in Thunder Bay police custody continues. Police Services Act charges have also been leveled at the currently suspended chief of police for alleged deceit and discreditable conduct. Here to bring us up to speed on what's happening in Thunder Bay is the Globe and Mail's Willow Fiddler. Willow, let's start with the charges against Thunder Bay Police Chief Sylvie Hoth. She was suspended already, and then she announced her retirement. So what can you tell us about the findings of the Ontario Civilian Police Commission in that matter?
So we already knew back in June that the OCPC substantiated the allegations against Sylvie Hoth. She's been charged with discreditable conduct and deceit, and that's for allegations for her role and involvement in an investigation that took place into a Thunder Bay Police Board member, Georgianne Morrisseau, who last year we know filed human rights complaints against the service and the board for discrimination and harassment. So those allegations against Sylvie, I mean, they're not directly related to the human rights complaints, but involves the board member Georgianne Morrisseau and some other things that were happening. So we knew that back in June. The OCPC has now last week said that they've completed that investigation. They've scheduled a hearing for Sylvie Hoth, which is scheduled for February 2023. They also exonerated basically the Deputy Chief Ryan Hughes, who was suspended last February or January by the board in what I'm going to say is an unrelated matter, but it's the board had said at the time it was an internal human resources matter. So he had allegations as well for his involvement in that investigation of board member Georgianne Morrisseau, but has now been exonerated. The board says he's still under suspension, so not sure what's happening with that. And then there was a third allegation that involved Sylvie Hoth, the suspended police chief, Deputy Chief Ryan Hughes, and the service's legal counsel Holly Walburn for collusion related to the OCPC's investigation and their request to get information from them. They weren't able to substantiate any of those allegations with no evidence, and that I think is in part because they weren't able to interview neither the police chief didn't consent to an interview for that. So yeah, that's what we know with the police chief right now. She's scheduled for a hearing in February.
Right. So also the administrator of the Thunder Bay Police Services Board has had his role extended into the new year. There's a search for a new police chief underway. Criminal investigations are still underway. Human rights complaints. I mean, where does this police service and the board go next?
Yeah, good question. That's kind of all up in the air still at this point. Like you said, there's still investigations happening. The Ontario Provincial Police are have been investigating since earlier this year as well, into senior members of the force. So we're kind of waiting for that to wrap up. So at this point, with the administrator now in place until next March, we're also waiting on basically, so yeah, a new police chief, a new board. That new board is all up in the air right now because of municipal elections that are happening here in the city. Because some of those appointments will come from the city, the other appointments will come from the province. And I want to mention that there's this expert panel that's been involved too, and this expert panel is a group of policing and governance experts that includes the chair right now. The chair is the former chair of the Toronto Police Board, and I think they're having an impact on this process as well. They released an interim report a few weeks ago, or not long ago, with their recommendations on how the administrator and board need to move forward on the crucial things right now is the new police chief and the new board, and that is all kind of sitting with them to make the meaningful changes that this city has been waiting for when it comes to policing.
And Willow, let's move now to the inquest into the deaths of Roland McKay and Don Lamakwa. Now in its second week, they died years apart, but under similar circumstances while in the custody of Thunder Bay Police. Can you bring us up to speed and up to date on where that's at?
Yeah, and I just want to first mention and acknowledge the families involved in this inquest. It's not an easy process. They have been extremely brave and courageous for being there. I had the chance to go late last week, and saw them. And it's difficult, so difficult. They're having to sit there during this inquest and watch, hear and see this evidence in the moments that, that their loved ones died. So yeah, similar circumstances. This is basically, looking at, this inquest is looking at how the Thunder Bay Police kind of interact and engage with intoxicated people, and particularly Indigenous intoxicated people, and that's based on things like stereotypes and biases, which, of course, this is nothing new for Thunder Bay. We've, the police have been subject to many inquests and investigations and reports that have found that these stereotypes and biases and racism affect how they police Indigenous people. So the inquest is hearing, from the family testified last week. They're hearing from medical experts this week who, said that it was quite likely that one of the men would still be alive had he been taken to hospital instead of jail. So again, this is also looking at how, what the appropriate response is to intoxicated people who may be, needing medical care and treatment instead of police custody. So we're hearing from experts in those areas. And the officers and the first responders as well, who were involved in the treatment of those two men.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Willow, but we certainly appreciate your insight into some of this, and it's always great chatting with you, so thank you for this.
Thanks, Doug.